furniture painting tips, excuse me. Kevin has started working on this. I guess it's a cabinet. Like it's sort of
a hutch.
You think it's a hutch?
Yeah, and it has a door, but the door's off.
Yeah, the door's off. Also, the hardware he took off. Yeah, I guess it's a hutch.
Yeah.
So we are painting this. This was like a super, super dark brown, right?
Yep, it's actually oak.
Wow, it didn't look like oak.
No, and it
and
was.
I will post a picture of it in the comments.
It
later.
was dark.
Yeah, really, really like the darkest brown.
So it's super heavy. It's really nice. It's very, very, very old, but
very old.
You don't find too many oak ones, but yeah, it's oak.
Yeah, it's nice. So Kevin has been working on it, and the first thing that he did, what was the first thing that you did to prep this?
I washed it. I cleaned it with TSP.
Okay.
Was
it very dirty?
It was filthy, but because it was whatever they stained this oak with, it washed and then left it really whitened it up.
Yeah, it almost looked like it had been limed.
Yeah,
when it was dry.
If I spun the back around, I could show you the white marks that it left on it, but it's okay. So I did it again. It didn't matter. It just happened to be whatever was used to stain this wood. It came out, and it's fine. Because we're going to paint it anyway.
Mm-hmm. It actually looked really good after it dried from being cleaned.
It gave it an interesting look.
It gave it like a lime wash look.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I asked you if we could do that more, and you were like, no.
I never know how that's going to last.
Yeah.
You can't seal it.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to do. It's a reaction that's cleaning the wood. You get it sometimes when you acid wash metal. You get like a white change, and so no. But
okay, so because it was so dark, we wanted to use a primer. We don't always do that. We actually almost never use a primer. But because it was so dark and we knew we wanted to go somewhat lighter.
Well, in that white, I didn't want that coming through another color.
So what we did, and I have never used this before, I like to try products, even if it's a paint line that we're carrying, like Paint Couture. I like to try it before I put it in my store.
Oops, hold on,
so this is Shore Prep Gray Blocking Primer. And we don't have it in the store yet, but we're going to be ordering it.
Goes on great.
Yeah. So
really.
So what did you tell us how it went on, and tell us what you
I
did.
used a sponge brush, and this is too light. No.
No.
This is one coat. I painted inside with 2 coats. So this is 1 coat. I just put it on, so you can see the wood grain. I mean, the grain is coming through on this. It's really amazing. And it covers it fairly well. You can still see some light and dark patches, but it works fine because it's really trying to just prevent a blocking.
Well, also, so you don't have to put 4 or 5 coats of paint on.
Yep, and gives it a nice base coat.
And it's actually,
not bad.
It's not a bad color. I mean, it's not bad. So he did that, and then you painted the inside. Mm-hmm. So the inside he painted with
Little Whale
from Fusion, and this is the color.
I'll tilt. You can't really see the difference there, but you can see there's a solid color. I did 2 coats inside there.
So it's like a very pale. I hate to call it a baby blue because it's not a baby color. It's a really pale blue, and it goes with a lot of different things. We actually have a piece in our bedroom that I painted in soapstone, which is like a medium to dark gray, and we used Little Whale. I used Little Whale for highlighting. So I'm going to do some painting tonight with one of Fusion's newest colors. This one is called Paisley, and it's just such a really pretty, a pretty bluish gray, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say blue gray.
It's like a smoky blue. Really pretty. So, I'm just going to give this a little bit of
and the inside of the cabinet's done light so that because it's dark in there, so when you open the door, at least it gives you a little bit of reflection.
Okay, so I have a little bowl, and the reason I have a little bowl is because I like to transfer my paint from the paint container to something else, like a plate or a bowl, or even sometimes if I just have craft paper on my table, I put it right on the paper. The reason being, I don't want to contaminate the paint. And you might say, well, your paintbrush is clean, the piece you're painting is clean, how are you going to contaminate it? It just can happen. How is that happens, honey? That you contaminate the paint by putting your brush directly in the container?
Because there are no solvents in this. So
Right.
if there's any bacteria or any germs, any oil from your hands, if you rub the brush in your hands and you've, pet the dog or the cat or whatever, anything can get into it. And because there are no solvents, it's not, or alcohols, it's not going to sanitize. It's not going to kill
Right.
organisms. So organisms can actually live in this, kind of like, it can get moldy. And remember we had some yellow that went crazy one year,
What a pretty color, guys.
Yep, that's
so
nice.
pretty. So pretty. I'm like, I have two cameras here. I'm like not sure. Okay, so I'm using a synthetic brush, of course. We always recommend synthetic brushes. This is a zipper brush. And this is a brush they came out with, I believe, about a year ago. And it's called a fan brush. And what I really like about it is, I feel like it's almost it's almost flat and it's almost round. And I can use it for a lot of different scenarios in painting. So if I only was going to buy one brush, I'd be very tempted to buy this fan brush. And the
Well, that's pretty non-committal. If I was only going to buy one brush, I'd be tempted. That doesn't really help anybody. I'd be tempted.
I didn't mean,
They're like, I'd be listening going, does that mean she really likes it?
I didn't mean for that to sound so non-committal. I would buy this brush.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm gonna start painting in here and on the top, and I'm just gonna give you some tips as I go, because painting in these areas are not easy. It's kind of a pain. So
So paint the back area so that your arm doesn't, note to self, when you paint like the bars in the front and then you're reaching beyond them, guess what? Your arm's going to rub up against them.
You want to do this.
So paint all the back stuff first.
So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm actually going to take my brush and kind of go in there and get all the edges. I'm almost like outlining it. Can you guys see how I outlined this panel here? So it's all outlined. I have the top, the sides, the bottom. So now all I need to do is take a little paint. Again, I'm not using a lot of paint. I don't want it to be dripping everywhere. Start from here and go from the bottom to the top, or top to the bottom. What that's going to do is that's going to allow me to not have a lot of brush strokes, because I'm literally touching the top of the panel, touching the bottom of the panel, and look at that, how nice. I don't have brush strokes. It's going to dry really nicely. And it doesn't take forever either. Now this really looks like it's covering amazingly well. But again, we're not going to know for sure till it dries. Fusion mineral paint has certain colors, and many of them are just very vivid, beautiful colors. Fort York red, Liberty blue, Renfrew blue.
Heavy pigments.
That are very heavily pigmented. So what that translates to is that they go on a bit sheer. So here's a good example. If I want to paint with Renfrew blue, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a coat of Seaside or even Homestead blue, because they're sort of similar. And then I can go over that when it dries with the Renfrew blue, and it's going to cover much better. If I want to work with Fort York red, I would use Cranberry first as my base coat. And then for Liberty blue, I would use Midnight blue. just for the base coat. So that's how I did that panel. I'm just going to get this side in here real quick.
See if you can paint when you're done with that. Paint that overhang in the front. Then they can.
Okay, I'm gonna get the top, but I'm not gonna do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the little overhang, which is very pretty. Now, I may decide that I like the way this looks and not want to come back with a second coat no matter what.
I tried to cover the heavy dark stuff because...
Yeah, I think you did.
And if you wanted to, you could always distress it and it's going to come through. So...
The only thing is, though, if you're going to distress it with Fusion, you want to do it within, I would say, a few hours.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Well, but you're not going to be able to wet distress it with
wet distress it.
Oh, sand it, you mean?
Yeah. Even sanding it, the longer it's dried, the more it's going to be curing, and the less you're going to be able to distress it, because it is such a durable paint. But there are things I could use. So if I thought I wanted this piece to be heavily distressed, I could have used a wax bar, beeswax, and rubbed it on first, and then paint right over it. And then in those areas, it's very easy to distress. And it actually can give you more of like an authentically chippy look. All right, let's keep going. So I also want to show you, so we've done a panel area. This part was very easy to do, you know, the details. But what I want to show you now is how I like to paint a longer area.
Like a tabletop.
Like a tabletop. So I know that there's a lot of people that struggle with brush strokes while I do this. So here what I'm going to do is do very similar to what I did on the top. I'm going to outline right here. Okay, so here's what I did here. I went in here and I outlined this whole top here. Now you wouldn't do that on a tabletop because you have the edges, which make it easier. But because I have this inside thing here, the back here, and the sides, I want to go ahead and highlight it. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this in sections. I'm going to start further away and come closer. Only because if I start here and go that way, I'm going to get paint on myself, which I really don't want to do. Okay, so I'm going to start here and just go back and forth with the paint. Let me show you what I'm doing. So I have a little paint on here. I'm not being super careful getting it on there. I just want to go back and forth using the sides of my brush, not the tip. And then what I'm going to do before I move closer and go to the next area is to just take one nice long brush stroke from end to end. Okay, so here we go. Keep going. So I'm going to just go back and forth. So then I'm going to just take my nice long brush stroke through, and that's it. It's very, very simple to do. I have a little bit more paint in my plate, so I'm just going to try to use it up. So here I'm going to do this next section right here, and I'll show you once more how I like to outline it with my brush. Okay, so now I've outlined it. Now this is going to be extra interesting here because I have this blocking me. So I'm not going to be able to do my... I did like half from the top and half from the bottom. That's what I did. To do my regular...
Right. So that's exactly what I did. Half from the top and then half from the bottom.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for doing the underneath, like up here, or doing under the bottom of shelves? Or...
I did the same way you did. I outlined the edges, which in
Why don't you show us
which
how
in
you
no, which in some cases goes against. You can't see. They can't see it.
Oh, they can't.
No.
Okay.
Which in some cases goes against the grain. So here's the thing: when she's painting this panel, you look at the grain is going up and down, but while she's outlining it, she's going against the grain on the top and the bottom. So you just want to remember that when you paint the rest of the panel, you straighten out those brush strokes that went against the grain, so that otherwise you will see strokes. You're always, and this is easy to spot the grain. So you just try to paint with the grain.
Exactly.
But it's okay to paint against the grain when you're outlining a panel, but then all you do is just straighten that paint out when you come back and you finish
Well,
it.
here's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you have a piece that has all different grains going in all different directions, like a veneer or a laminate?
That's a good question. So
it
would depend on if you believe like this one right here. You can see the grain.
Yeah.
You could put 4 coats of paint on this, and you're still going to see the grain on this. So the grain matters. If you had a veneer, and we've got a couple of those dressers in the store, the waterfall dressers, which are veneer, but you can't see the grain anymore.
So in other words, in situations like that, the grain doesn't matter.
The grain doesn't matter. Then you want to paint. You want your brush strokes the way it will look best.
Right.
You know.
All right, I'm going to do this one last section. So again, I'm looking at this right here as a panel. And what I mean by a panel is something that's either recessed.
Well, you're going to paint it as a section.
Or but it's more than that because you have to outline it. You don't necessarily have to outline every section that you paint.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm outlining it. The sides, the top, the bottom.
So now those top and bottom lines, those are against the grain. They're okay for now, but then once you finish, you'll go top to bottom.
Absolutely, and that's what I want them to see. go. Last one. Okay. Thanks for watching. Take care.